Hello class, today we're going to go ahead and look at section 8.6. This is our third day in section 8.6. The first 2 days we're solving rational equations. Today we're going to go ahead and look at solving rational inequalities. So we're going to have less than, greater than, signs in there. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So here are our steps laid out for how we're going to solve rational inequalities. Okay, so step one is solve the related equation. So what that means is we're just going to solve the equation that we're given, just like you were solving equations the past 2 days. The next thing, step two, will be to set your denominator equal to 0 and solve. Okay, this value will be excluded from the domain. The reason that's going to be excluded is because you cannot have 0 in your denominator. Okay, that will provide, it's undefined and it will give you an error. Step three, we're going to use the values from step 1 and 2 to create a number line. Okay, and we're going to use those as dividers. So we're going to draw vertical lines to separate the number line into intervals. Step 4, we're going to test a sample value in between those intervals. And then step 5, we're going to use our answers from step 4 to write our solution. So we're going to go ahead and work through this step by step on example 1. All right, example 1 says 7 minus 2b is less than 5 over b. So the first one is to solve the related equation. Okay, so to solve the related equation means to solve it like an equation. So I'm just gonna go ahead. This is step 1. I'm gonna go ahead and write it as a equal sign. So it's 7 minus 2b equals 5 over b. Okay, we're going to go ahead and solve this. So I will multiply by my LCD, which is b. So I would have 7b minus, it'd be 2b over b, so they would cancel. So I would just be left with 2, is equal to, it'd be 5b over b, so it would just be 5. So I would add 2 to both sides. So I have 7b is equal to 7, and I would solve this by dividing both sides by 7. So b will equal 1. Okay, so this is my first value. So this is step 1. Took care of that. Now step 2 says set your denominator equal to 0 and solve. Alright, so my denominator, so it's b is equal to 0. Well, there's no solving involved there, so I have just b equals 0. So b equals 1 and b equals 0. We're going to use those values, they're from step 1, to create a number line. Okay, so this isn't going to be exactly, you can just kind of put them on there. It's a way to think about it. So I have 0 and I have 1. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead. It says draw vertical lines at these values to separate the number line into intervals. Okay, so I'm going to draw some lines to separate them into intervals. Okay, so I have an interval to the left of 0, in between 0 and 1, and then to the right of 1. Okay, so that's step 3. So we got those two done. Step 4, test the sample value in each interval to determine if the value in the interval satisfies the equation. So we have to pick 3 values from each interval. Okay, so I'm going to pick b is equal to -1. Then I'm going to pick b is equal to a number in between 0 and 1, 1/2. And then I'm going to pick b is equal to a number greater than 1, 2. And I'm going to go ahead and plug those all into my original inequality. Okay, so 7 is less than 2 over, let me write this out a little nicer, okay, because this is step 4. Okay, step 4, and I'm going to first do b equals -1. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in here. So I'm plugging it into the original equality. So I have 7 minus 2 over -1. Is that less than 5 over -1? Okay, so this would be minus a -2, because if I divide that, so it's really plus 2. So I'd have 7 plus 2, is that less than 5 divided by -1 is -5. So 7 plus 2 is 9. Is 9 less than -5? That is not true. Okay, so that will not be part of our solution. Okay, so then I move on. There was my first point. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue checking the next point, 1/2. So b is equal to 1/2. So I try this, I would have 7 minus 2 over 1/2. Is that less than 5 over 1/2? So I plug this in. 2 divided by 1/2 is going to give me 4. So I would have 7 minus 4. Is that less than? And 5 divided by 1/2 will give me 10. And if you don't know that, you can type it in your calculator. So 7 minus 5 is 3. Is 3 less than 10? Is that true? Yes. So that means I'm going to shade here on my number line in between 0 and 1. Now my last step is to check b equals 2. So I would have 7 minus 2 over 2. Is that less than 5 over 2? Well, this is really 7 minus 1, which gives me 6. Is 6 less than 5 divided by 2 is 2.5? No, that is not true. Okay, so I do not shade for values greater than 1. So I'm going to write my answer by looking at this number line. If I looked at 0, it can't be 0, so it's undefined. So I have an open circle. I have an open circle at 0. Okay, and then my 1 came from solving my equation, which it says it's less than. So if it's less than or greater than, we're going to have open circle. So I'm going to have an open circle. And just a reminder, if it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, then I will have a filled in circle. Okay, then by looking at my number line, I just need to go ahead and state my solution. Okay, my solution is that b is in between 0 and 1. So I would have that 0 is less than, b is less than 1. So this is my final solution. Okay, so there is a lot of steps here. So if you have any questions for example 1, please write them down now. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and do example 2 and see if that can help us get these steps down. Okay, example 2, got a little more room to write for this one, so this is good. We have 1 over 4a plus 5 over 8a, and that's greater than 1/2. All right, so step 1, solve the equation as is. Okay, step 1, so I have 1 over 4a plus 5 over 8a. Is that equal to 1/2? Okay, so I'm going to take this one, my least common denominator. I have 4, 8, and 2, so I can make them all be 8. And I'm going to have 8a. So I take these, multiply to my numerator. Okay, well, 8a times 1 will give me 8a over 4a. Plus 5 times 8a over 8a will equal 8a over 2. So I would simplify. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and my a's will simplify to 1. The 8a's will cancel, so I have plus 5 is equal to 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I have 7 is equal to 4a. And I will go ahead and divide by 4. So a is equal to 1.25. Sorry, 75, right? Because it'd be, yes, 1.75. All right, there's my a. So my original equation was a greater than, so it's going to be an open circle at 1.75. So let's figure out what our value for our denominator is. Okay, so step 2, we take our denominator, set it equal to 0. Doesn't, so we can check, we have 4a. Okay, so I have, if I divide both sides by 4, type it in my calculator, 0 divided by 4 is 0. My other denominator is 8a. Divide by 8. So once again, a is equal to 0. Okay, so it cannot be 0. So I have 0 and 1.75. So I'm going to put those on my graph here. I'm just going to estimate. I'm going to say, I don't know, I'm just going to write that this is 1.75. Okay, this one's going to be an open circle because you can't be 0 because that will give me 0 in my denominator. And down here I said open circle. Now I pick my test points. Number less than 0 would be -1. So a equals -1. A number in between 0 and 1.75 would be 1. And let's pick one that's greater, so let's pick 2. So I'm going to plug them into my equation. So this would be step 4. Okay, so I will have that a is equal to -1. If I plug it in, I have 1 over 4 times -1, so I'm going to have a -1/4 plus 5 over -8, so minus that. And is that greater than 1/2? Okay, well, you could probably put your logic together. A negative minus more is going to be a negative number, so it won't be greater than 1/2. But if you didn't know, you can type it in your calculator, and you get -0.875. Is that greater than 1/2? No, so I do not shade to the left of 0. The next one is a is equal to 1. So if I plug in 1, I just have 1/4 plus 5 over 8. Is that greater than 1/2? Do this piece on your calculator, and you get 0.875. Is that greater than 1/2 or 0.5? Yes, it is. So I'm going to shade in between here. And the last one, a equals 2. I will have 1 over 4 times 2, so I have 1 over 8, plus 5 over 8 times 2, so over 16. Is that greater than 1/2? Okay, so I go ahead and I type in my calculator 1/8 plus 5/16, and that will give me 0.4375. Is that greater than 1/2? No, so I do not shade there. So then my solution comes from looking up at my number line. Okay, it's where I shaded. So 0 is less than A is less than 1.75. There is my answer for example 2. All right, example 3, let's move on. Okay, step 1, we need to go ahead and solve this as is. Okay, so I would have 1 plus 5 over y minus 1, and that equals 7 over 6. So my least common denominator would be 6 times y minus 1. So I have 6 times y minus 1 plus my y minus 1s will cancel when I distribute here, so it's 5 times 6 will equal 7, and then my 6's will cancel, so it's 7 times y minus 1. So I have 6y minus 6 plus 30 is equal to 7y minus 7. On my left-hand side, negative 6 plus 30 will give me 24 is equal to 7y minus 7. Subtract 6y, add 7. So this gives me 31 is equal to y. So my y value is 31. Okay, the next step is to take my denominator and set it equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so step 2, we would have my denominator is y minus 1 equals 0, so y is equal to 1. Okay, so this is for my denominator, so it's going to be an open circle. This one came from my equation, which it's an equal to. So this one is actually going to be a shaded in circle. Okay, so I have 1 and 31, so I'm just going to label it. I know it's skipping a whole bunch of numbers in between here. But at 1 I have open circle. At 31 I have a closed circle. Okay, so now I go ahead and divide it into intervals. What's a number that's less than 1? Well, a number less than 1 is 0, so I'm going to try y equals 0. Then a number in between 1 and 31. I'm going to try 2, sure. And then y equals number greater than 31. Let's try 32. Okay. So if I go ahead and do this, I would first have, this is for step 4, plug in y equals 0. Okay, I will have 1 plus 5 over 0 minus 1. Is that less than or equal to 7/6? So I have really 1 plus 5 over negative 1, so it's 1 minus 5, which will give me negative 4. Negative 4, is that less than or equal to 7/6? Yes, so I'm going to shade to the left. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and try y equals 2. So I have 1 plus 5 over 2 minus 1. Is that less than or equal to 7/6? So this is going to give me 1, so it's 6. Is 6 less than or equal to 7/6? No, so I will not write that one down. And now lastly, I'm going to try 32. So I have 1 plus 5 over 32 minus 1. Is that less than or equal to 7/6? So if I type this in 1 plus 5 over 31 into my calculator, I would get 1.161. Is that less than or equal to? And 7 divided by 6 is a 1.16 repeating. Okay. Well, is this less than that? Yes, because see how this is 6, 1? This would be 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So this one is actually bigger, so this works. So I'm going to shade here to the left. Okay. So now I have 2 pieces to my inequality, so I'm going to write them both down. Okay, y is less than 1, or y is, okay, since it's shaded, greater than or equal to 31. So this would be my solution for example 3. Okay. All right, we have one more example. I highly recommend that you pause the video right now and try example 4 on your own to make sure you have the steps down. Okay, so pause the video and then I will go ahead and go over it after you do it. So pause it and then do it. All right, example 4. First step, solve it as is. So I have to think, what's the least common denominator? Well, the numbers 3, 5, and 15. I can make them all be 15. And then there's going to be an x on there. Okay, so I distribute the 15x. 15 divided by 3 will give me 5. X over x will be gone. So minus 2. Now I have 15x and 5x in the denominator. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then x over x, they will cancel. And here, I would have 15x over 15. The 15s will cancel, so I'm just left with x. So it's 5 minus 6 is equal to x. 5 minus 6 is negative 1, so x is equal to negative 1. Okay, that's my first number. Second number comes from my denominator. And notice how they're both 3x, and then the other one's 5x. So if I solve this one, I get x is equal to 0. And if I set 5x equal to 0, same thing, divide by 5, x will equal 0. So either way, x is 0. And this is for my denominator, so it's going to be open circle on there. And then I have negative 1. And this is less than, so it's going to be an open circle as well. Okay. Now I divide up my intervals. And I'm going to pick values that are less than, in between, and greater than. So I will have that x is equal to, well, a number less than negative 1 would be negative 2. A number in between negative 1 and 0 would be negative 1/2. And a number greater than 0 would be 1. Okay, so this is my step 4. So I'm going to go ahead and try negative 2. So x equals negative 2. Plug it into the original. So I would have 1 over 3 times negative 2, so negative 6, minus 2 over 5 times negative 2 would be negative 10. Is that less than 1 over 15? I would type the left-hand side into my calculator, okay, and I would have 0.03 repeating. And is that less than? If I type 1 divided by 15 in my calculator, I get 1.06 repeating. So is this smaller? Is 3 smaller than 6? Yes, so that works. So I'm going to shade to the left. The next one I try is x equals negative 1/2. So I have I would have 1 over 3 times 1/2, so I'm going to have negative 1/2. 3 times negative 1/2 will give me negative 1.5, minus 2 over 5 times negative 1/2 will give me negative 2.5. And we want to know, does that equal 1 over 15? Okay, so the left-hand side, type it into your calculator. You're going to get 0.13 repeating. Is that less than 0.06 repeating? So I'm looking at this first decimal. 1 is bigger than 0. Okay, so no, because it says this has to be less than. And the last one I need to check, I need to plug in 1 and check. Okay, so if I plug in 1, 3 times 1 is 3, so I'd have 1 over 3, minus 2 over 5 times 1, so 5. Is that less than 1 over 15? So I type in the left-hand side of my calculator. I get negative, one second, negative 0.06 repeating. And if I type in 1 divided by 15 on my calculator, I get 0.06 repeating. So this one is negative, so since it's negative, it is less than, so it does work. So we check shade there. And now the last step to do is write my answer. And my answer would be that x is to the left or less than negative 1, or x is greater than 0. There is my answer for example 4. Okay, so that will be it for the section 8.6 video. If you have any questions, please write them down, ask me, and have a great day. I'll see you later.